Well, guys, you're at Hub. It's a great place to be. How is it almost the end of October? Wow, we're really fast approaching the end of 2020. And I imagine for some, you're thinking, this is exactly how I thought the year was going to go. Just kidding. That wasn't any of us. But probably for all of us, maybe there's some reminders. What was I planning to do this year? What was the goal I had for this year, the resolution that I made? I want to encourage you, before we even kind of dig into anything else, maybe just bring that to your mind. What was I hoping to be this year or do this year? Now, without getting discouraged, without getting, disillusioned, thinking I was planning to travel and go to these places and that got canceled, or I was hoping, for my life to be somewhere different than it is. It's always just a great thing to remember where we came from, because what was our future is now our present, and really soon will be our past. Does that make sense? That what we're living in right now is a moment that we look forward to, and it's also a moment that we'll look back on. And I hope that as the year comes to a close, we're going to look back on many of these moments and think, man, I did well in that moment. That was my moment. I really did that well. And probably, if we're really honest and transparent with ourselves, there's a whole bunch of moments in 2020 that we look back on and go, not my best moment. But aren't you grateful for the grace of God, that He just helps us, that even when we fall, we can get back up and keep moving? As we talk about this theme of ancient future in our season right now around Vision Sunday and setting the tone for the year that is going to be, I wanted just to kind of rehearse and go back over a few of the things I talked about on Sunday. Maybe more than any other theme throughout the year, we're kind of just drilling back on the same thing in a few different ways so that it can get deep down in our hearts. So we're talking about devotion specifically, about what it is to be devoted, to not just be intrigued by something, not just be kind of momentarily obsessing over the details of it, or not just be, romanticizing how good it will be. Sometimes we do that about things like trips or careers or relationships or, acquiring new things. We get this romantic ideal. It's going to be amazing when I get there. But the thing about devotion is it's amazing right now. Putting in the work is amazing right now, because the work we do for the thing we're devoted for is part of how we demonstrate that devotion. Does that make sense? So I was talking about David to Solomon. As David's handing off his kingdom to Solomon, the statement he makes in 1 Chronicles 28, I love this so much. In verse 9 it says, "To you, my son Solomon, acknowledge the God of our father and serve Him with wholehearted devotion." Let me just pause there for a second. I think the fact that you're at a hub right now expresses some devotion, certainly a level of devotion. For some, you're hosting a hub, and I think that expresses also a very unique level of devotion. If in any of our lives we did like a thorough deep dive, we would see a whole bunch of other little things that demonstrate devotion. But I love what David's saying to Solomon, where he says, let that devotion be wholehearted. Just think about how radical that is. Like, to be singular of thought, like singular of focus, completely focused in on one particular goal. That's a hard thing to do. And it's a really challenging thing to do over time. It's easy to have moments, but devotion, it's for the long haul. Devotion is this lifestyle. So he says, Solomon, have a lifestyle of devotion. And then he goes on to describe a little bit of what that might feel like. He says, have wholehearted devotion and have a willing mind, for the Lord searches your heart. He understands your desires and even your thoughts. If you seek Him, you will be found by Him. Or you will find Him, I should say. And if you forsake Him, you'll be rejected. Verse 10, consider now, for the Lord has chosen you to build a house as the sanctuary. And then I love this statement, one of my favorites. He says this, be strong and do the work. I wonder if we could, as a church, say, I'm going to do both those things. I'm going to be strong in my convictions of what I'm devoted to, but I'm actually going to put some work in to show that devotion. Imagine if love was something we expressed, and when we told someone we loved them, they were like, really? I never would have known. Imagine that. I'm like, Jennifer, I love you. And she goes, seriously? Since when? Like, how would I know that? That would probably be a bit of a failure on my part to express that devotion, to put in the work. And I think the same would be true. Like, if people in your life find out you're a believer, I love this. When I don't know someone well and they find out I'm a Christian or a pastor and they go, whoa, I did not see that coming. I kind of like that early on in a relationship. But if someone's known me for a long time and they find out that I love Jesus and they're like, wow, mind blown. You just don't seem like you care at all. there's probably something wrong with my devotion. And so if we're going to be like the early church, this ancient understanding of what it is to be the people of God, and if we're going to carry that into our future, then it affects those areas we've been talking about: a devotion to development, a devotion to deepened and diversified relationships, a devotion to a dependency on God, and then a devotion to demonstration. I asked a couple questions on Sunday, and if you didn't yet watch Sunday's service, please go back and do that. In fact, if you're getting this video before Hub, just get yourself ready by going back and preparing in that way. And if you're not watching before, you can go after and check it out. I imagine you're probably already subscribed, but if you haven't, we find there's a lot of people who have yet to just hit that subscribe button. It will help you keep up to date. But let me kind of reiterate some of those questions around development. What are you developing in this season? Like over the time that you've been in a different type of lifestyle, working from home, or maybe educating from home, or perhaps kind of watching the trends and the signs and trying to adjust your lifestyle. What have you been developing? Have you been getting smarter? Have you been getting stronger? Have you been getting more resolute in your understanding? Have you been broadening your perspective? But specifically, theologically, how are you developing? And I wonder if we could get really authentic with one another tonight, maybe share, here's an area of theology or worldview or my understanding of God and doctrine where I feel like I really have some developing to do. Now, what might happen is if you share that with one another, someone else in the room is going to go, oh yeah, me too. And you can work on it together. Or what you might find is as you say, I need to really understand this, that someone in the room might have an answer that is to the question that you've been kind of holding quietly in your heart for a while. But let's make that commitment. We're going to develop together. And then when it comes to your relationships, are they getting deeper? Or are they getting shallower? When it comes to relationships, are you finding a way to creatively become more diverse, or are you becoming increasingly isolated and insulated with just a few? Now, I know that Dr. Bonnie Henry has said locally, stay to 6. And I know in different countries where some people are tuning in from, there's totally different regulations around being creative in our relationships. But it really does truly take some courage, some stick-to-itiveness, which, by the way, is what devotion means. Devotion isn't, I like doing this. Devotion is, I'm doing this because I value it. And so, for some, even connecting on Zoom or taking the time to FaceTime someone or taking the time to log in and watch this Hub content before you gather with people, that takes a real statement of devotion. And for all of us, I think, making deeper friendships and more diverse relationships in this season, it is really an act of devotion. But let's do it. If you don't deepen your relationships, you'll probably deepen your independence. If you don't deepen your relationships, you'll probably deepen your selfishness, which is kind of the default mode that we can all fall into. So let's make a determination. I'm going to deepen and put down more roots in my relationships. When it comes to dependency, what have you been dependent on in this time? There's probably a series of things that you kind of use in different times and in different ways, kind of like we have different relationships for different purposes. But what have you become more dependent on? Is it a substance? Is it a habit? Is it a practice? I know those sirens are super loud, but I'm going to stay focused. I want you to as well. Is it like the way that you spend your time, the way you spend your money, or has your dependency on God grown? I sure hope it has. And I know, for me, I could probably say yes and no. Man, there's been some times in these last number of months where I feel like, God, if not for you, oh man, I got nothing. Which, by the way, is true all the time. There's probably been other times where I've thought, God, I'm so busy right now trying to figure out this COVID thing, I'll get back to you. Man, I want to lessen those times. I want to extend the gaps in between those times and grow this more soft-hearted dependency on God. I hope that's your heart too, but why don't we share maybe if there's something else that we've been building our dependency on, and make a commitment as a Hub. Let's not be those people. Let's remind one another to bring these things to the Lord. Let's remind one another to be people of prayer. And then lastly, in demonstration, and this is probably the area maybe that the most spirited conversation might take place, perhaps in your Hub. But I think it's so interesting that often the way we demonstrate our feelings does not reflect the nature of the feelings themselves. Like sometimes the way we express our love for someone is through being really critical of them. And you're like, well, why are you so mean to me? It's like, well, actually, you're the only person I feel comfortable enough to share my full opinion with. but that demonstration does not reflect the emotion that we're trying to get across. Does that make sense? Like when you're like, I am opposed to violence. I'm opposed to bullying. And I am willing to beat up anyone who's not opposed to bullying. It's like that demonstration doesn't reflect the heart. I just think we have to become better at the way we protest. And maybe even on a deeper level, how do we be proactive about the things we value instead of just demonstrating what we're against? Now that would have political ramifications, that would have sociological ramifications, it would have religious ramifications, but certainly it would also have personal ones. Like sometimes we don't demonstrate our faith in God because if He's really in control, we should be living without stress. Do you know what I'm saying? Like a demonstration of knowing God is in control is that we're pretty chill about some things that might stress the rest of the world out. I got some peace in my heart about this. Maybe understanding God's heart for humanity, that we just demonstrate that through by not showing criticism to every little thing that disagrees with us, instead bringing encouragement to the equation. Whatever that might be for you, I just think there's a great conversation to be had. Does my demonstration reflect the qualities that I say I'm devoted to? And if it doesn't on any of these areas, guess what? Devotion is simply putting strategy, courage, work, and effort toward the thing that you said you valued. It is to be strong in what you value and then put in the work. So let's be those people. Love you guys a lot. I'm excited to see you on Sunday. Got a really fun message I'm looking forward to sharing.